All right, I see the Zoom room is filling up. It must mean it is 8 o'clock on a Thursday night and time for Football Letter Live. We have a great show lined up for you tonight. We welcome lettermen Paris Palmer and Brandon Noble to the program tonight. John Black is here, ready to go. We'll be getting started in just a minute or two. Let us know who you are and where you're from and your Penn State class year. Drop that information in the chat box as you have done now for the past, what is it now, 12, 13 weeks of Football Letter Live. Good to see some familiar names in the participants box. I see Russ Mitchell, I see Jonathan and John Hess from Westchester, Pennsylvania, and Kevin Lashane, always the first one to drop his name in the chat box from our Aiken Augusta chapter. I see the Lynn Marie DiCarlo from New Milford, New Jersey. Welcome into Football Letter Live, of course, Joe Clifford from Cunningham, Pennsylvania.
Jan and Judy Marshall. Great to have them from Minnesota.
Dave McClung, a wonderful alumni volunteer back in Avalon, New Jersey. Good to see you, Dave. I say back in Avalon, New Jersey. He's been all over the country doing some great work out on the West Coast and spends a little bit of time in the Cascades of Oregon, but it's good to have him back on the East Coast. I see Joanne DeGroat in the belly of the beast there in Columbus, Ohio. And Jim DeLark tuning in down in Charlotte, North Carolina, and Bob Jones in Millerstown. Good to see you all. Finally, Russ Mitchell, finally a complete game, and we're still undefeated in the second half. Yes, good to get a win under our belt there, Russ.
The second half, great.
We will be getting started in just a minute. Good to see everybody here tonight. Where else would you rather be than a Zoom full of Penn Staters? I'm Paul Clifford, CEO of the Penn State Alumni Association, and welcome to Football Letter Live. Tonight, we welcome two impressive Penn State football lettermen, Paris Palmer and Brandon Noble. We're encouraging you to share your questions for our guests tonight. You can do that in the Q&A feature on Zoom, or if you are tuning in on Facebook Live, you can drop your questions in the comments. We'll try to get to as many of those as we possibly can. As always, I am joined by the legendary editor of the Football Letter, John Black. John, how are you tonight?
I'm fine, Paul. I hope you're the same.
I am the same. You know, the Rutgers game this year, next on the schedule, takes on a little bit of a different meaning this year, though. Rutgers has been really competitive in the Big Ten. John, what do you think some of the keys to the game are?
Well, Rutgers is having a great year for them. They really are, and had a great game last week when they upset Purdue after a big comeback in the second half. Of course, we were out at Michigan last week, and out there, Penn State had the best play by their offensive line this whole season, as well as their rushing attack, having a breakout game with freshman Kevon Lee. So now with the expected return of Devin Ford, of course, hopefully we've got three running backs again ready to go. And of course, the continuing running of our two quarterbacks. Plus you have the emergence of Parker Washington as a strong number 2 wide receiver. When opponents have their best defenders focused on covering Jahan Dotson. That's a nice plus to have.
Yeah.
So I think Penn State's biggest concern now is to continue to avoid the turnovers and get more consistent play from their defense and special teams, and they should defeat Rutgers. But I also think that the Scarlet Knights will be more pumped up for this game than they have been for any other opponent this fall. They've had that nice comeback upset over Purdue, raised the record to 2-4, and the team that they most want to beat every year is Penn State. Now that would make a big season for them, it would be a big success, regardless of what they have done or didn't do in any of their other games. Rutgers has beaten Penn State only twice in the 30-game series. That was in the first game in 1918, and then 70 years later in 1988, when their head coach was Dick Anderson, a former assistant coach at Penn State. Well, this year they have another head coach, Greg Schiano, who is also a former assistant coach at Penn State, as well as being a former head coach at Rutgers from 2001 to 2011, when he rebuilt the Rutgers program once before. And he has never lost to Penn State because the two teams did not play during his first tenure at the, quote, state university in a state that is very bitter about constantly losing their best high school players to Penn State. So for recruiting purposes, Schiano has a great incentive to beat Penn State. And the players and their fan base would be ecstatic to do so. So they will be more psyched up than Penn State, I think, on Saturday, just as Penn State was more psyched up than Michigan out in Ann Arbor last week. Now, Schiano has a knack for using trick plays against teams that are more talented than his own. So Penn State, I think, has to prevent any big plays by their leading receiver, Bo Melton, or the running back, Isaiah Pacheco, to counter the Scarlet Knights' greater incentive to win. So to me, those are the keys to Saturday's encounter in Piscataway.
Well, John, you said it right. I mean, it's always the biggest game on the Rutgers calendar. You know, they scheduled that Penn State game. It's that I don't want to call them a cross-border rival because I don't think Penn State thinks of it as a rivalry, but it's certainly the biggest game on their schedule each year. And we'll see. Look, they come in with arguably the best Rutgers team that Penn State will have faced in this series, and so it's bound to be a competitive game.
In the Big Ten, yes, certainly since they've joined the Big Ten.
Absolutely, and say what you want about Coach Schiano. His teams are always prepared. They're always well coached, and I think we're in for a fight on Saturday.
Well, yeah, he's a great motivator. Now, I would point out that the Penn State had 2 wins this week by its basketball teams. The Lady Lions beat St. Francis 87-54 on Monday as they made 56.7% of their shots from the field. And then for anybody who wasn't watching just last night, the men's team led by Seth Lundy's 32 points beat a hustling and very scrappy VCU team 72-69 on a last second buzzer beating 3-point shot by Miles Davis. So we've had a little success already this week. Let's hope we can continue it Saturday.
Absolutely. An exciting win over a good Virginia Commonwealth team. I mean, Virginia Commonwealth team in.
They're an excellent team this year.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, hey, we have a great program lined up tonight talking to 2 lettermen. Let's welcome our first one into the program. He was a Penn State offensive lineman former Penn State offensive lineman. Transferred from Lackawanna College. He's a member of the 2016 Big Ten Champions and Rose Bowl team. He received the Quarterback Club Special Award at the annual Nittany Lion football banquet. He's currently one of our colleagues here at Penn State. He's on the staff at as a communications coordinator for the Belisario College of Communications. Let's welcome Paris Palmer into the program. Paris, how are you tonight?
I'm doing well, Paul. John, thank you guys so much for having me. I felt like a boxer coming out, all the accolades. Thank you so much.
Great to have you.
All right. In the blue corner from Lackawanna Junior College. There we go. And I should say, and Plymouth, North Carolina.
Yes.
Absolutely. Well, hey, let's talk a little bit about your recruiting process. I mentioned you played at Lackawanna. after out of high school before transferring to Penn State. What drew you to Penn State, and what was your path to becoming a Nittany Lion?
Well, it's a crazy story actually, because initially I was committed to University of South Carolina for 11 months, and
Yeah.
I had done something that was out of the ordinary for a recruit. I actually shut down my recruitment. I would tell colleges who were reaching out to me, who wanted to get me on campus for visits, that I don't want to add any more confusion to my decision. I'm completely set on South Carolina, totally gonna go there. And I had every intention to do that. But this was the same year that Steve Spurrier was deciding if he was going to retire or not.
Right.
And I just felt like when I was asking some of those coaches what that was going to look like, I was kind of given the runaround a bit, and even so with him. And as I'm kind of debating this, James Franklin, his staff, and their persistence, they're calling me, FaceTime me every single day and night. And I just want to relax after classes and practice, but they're so persistent. And actually, it was actually our winter break, and I took a visit to South Carolina. I took an official there just so that I wouldn't, like, my mom wouldn't have to pay to fly me back home. I could use that to get back to North Carolina, which is only about 2 hours or so away from South Carolina. And I was going to use a Penn State visit to get me back to PA without having to pay for the actual ticket. So that was my plan. And Penn State knew that. But they were so adamant about getting me on campus. And for me, it was just that. I was still totally rock solid on South Carolina at the time, but I came to see Penn State play Michigan State, and even though they lost the game, it was just so much support in the stands. The fans were, they were just, as I said, so supportive, and they were just so positive, and it was just really shocking to see because, well, for one, it was like so cold, but they were just so enthusiastic and positive, and it was a rarity for me to see that out of fans, and especially what the score was. It wasn't like a close loss. It was a pretty bad loss. So that kind of just showed the character of the Penn State community to me, and that's something that stuck with me. And there was just a feeling when I got to State College. It was something I couldn't describe, something I didn't feel when I visited other schools. And it was something that kind of stayed with me up until December 13th. And that's when I officially called South Carolina. I told them I'm going to decommit. I wrote my statement, and I put that out there. I felt like I wanted to talk to their fans because I didn't want the picture painted of me was to be, I'm a man that goes back on his word. That was something I dealt with a lot, and I struggled with, because in my heart of hearts, I knew I wanted to go to Penn State, but I had already given my verbal and my word. And I hold that in high regard. So it took me a while, and because I'm convincing from my mother that it's okay because, this is your life, your decision. And even so, I just couldn't pass up the opportunity to, work with James Franklin and his staff and our team to be able to bring a prestigious university such as Penn State back to those the standard as what the football was at that point. So for me, it was all about all those things. So that's pretty much what led me to Penn State, the entire story.
How was your transition to Pennsylvania? Moving away from your family, and did Penn State start to feel like home very quickly for you, Paris?
So from North Carolina to Pennsylvania, it was shocking because I had never seen snow that kind of like built in the inches. It was somewhat of like, okay, it's snowing one day out of the entire year, and by the time we wake up, you would never know. So when I first stepped foot in Pennsylvania for the first time, and I went on Lackawanna's campus, it was snowing. It was a light snow. So I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. It's not that cold, but then you mix in the ice and the wind, and when the snow doesn't melt, it sticks, then it's a different scene. So it took a little bit to adjust to Pennsylvania weather, but as far as Penn State, I felt right at home. As
Good.
soon as I got off of the plane, I actually landed in Harrisburg, and PJ Mullen, he actually drove me here, and we talked, and we just had an amazing conversation the whole way. And he had all of the tools that I wanted as far as working in that communications industry, and he had all the knowledge. So I'm picking his brain the whole way. But just from start to finish, it felt right at home. Even so that when they flew to North Carolina for my official commitment to Penn State, it was actually my birthday that same day. So I got to commit to Penn State for my birthday. I don't know if a lot of fans know that, but another thing I hold in high regard for sure.
And you started out talking about academics on your trip from Harrisburg to State College, right?
Of course. That was a couple of my first questions for PJ. Just because I hadn't seen any one set of facilities that looked like what Innovation Park looks like, and I don't know
Right.
for those who may not know what it looks like. It's full of just studio cameras and radio equipment and live television sets and mixers, and it was just I felt like a kid in a candy shop, and I also felt like there was no other communications program offering those resources, and
Right.
I only felt that in my my heart of hearts.
Right.
But come to find out, that's actually true. The Butler College of Communications is one of the more premier communications programs in the nation.
Absolutely.
Right. So it was great to double down and follow my heart, and it worked out.
Good.
I bet, but look, I know PJ Mullen. I bet when he picked you up, he had like a special mixtape already. It was like the Paris Palmer. This is like the Paris Palmer experience, right? And PJ is so meticulous in the work that he does. I'm sure that everything you heard in that car was pre-planned for weeks by him.
Well, I'd hope not. I hope there was some genuineness to it.
Yeah. So hey, let's fast forward a bit to your senior year, 2016, a pretty special season in the history of Penn State football. Big Ten title, going to the Rose Bowl. You battled through an injury that you suffered against Indiana in November. You played 10 games. Talk a little bit about what made that team special and what stood out for you about that season.
Well, honestly, if I'm thinking about what made us special, is because I would say we were just so close. We were so close, and it was like there were no egos in the locker room. There were no one that was bigger than the team, or even though someone may have more accolades or more quote unquote fame or things of that nature, there was no one was unapproachable. And when you have a locker room full of guys who all communicate with each other and who are all open and honest with each other and have fun and protect each other on and off the field, because we didn't have like any off the field issues that year as well. So we did a great job protecting each other on and off the field, and just holding each other accountable. I felt like that team was full of guys who had been counted out in their careers, guys who had been the quote unquote offspring of that 2012 class who
Right.
made that stand and said, hey, we're going to stay and we're going to fight through this. And a lot of those guys were coached by a lot of the guys in my locker room when I was there were coached by those guys, those seniors. Yeah. So it was an assimilation of all that. And also one of the more standout moments for me was the summer of that year, we had a leadership council meeting. And in this leadership council meeting, we're just talking about the season projection and stuff. And Naeem Wortman, he says, like he asked for the floor, James Franklin gives him the floor. And he says, I understand us wanting to take everything one game at a time and worrying about who's on our schedule, and we're going to be 1-0 that week. But and he said these words, he said verbatim, we don't talk about Big Ten championships enough around here. And there was a dead silence in the room because everyone started thinking to themselves, because he was right. He was 1,000% right. And of course, James wanted to make sure that we kept the mindset of being 1-0 that week and not looking past any opponents. But right. He also concurred that he felt that was very accurate. And from that point on, we carried ourselves as though we are in that conversation before the world knew. So even when we knew that night we beat Michigan State that year that we were Big Ten champions, I posted a picture and I had in the caption that before the world knew, before everybody knew, we believed. And that's kind of what manifested itself is from our belief and hard work.
Great. Are there particular lessons, Paris, that you learned while you were a student athlete at Penn State that you continue to lean on, that have followed you?
Oh yes, for sure. I've always been someone who believes that if you are in a sport or even just in general passionate about something, and let's say that's something that you need to be active to do it, that passion doesn't go away. It's just you just have to constructively steer it into something. But with that comes those hard conversations in the mirror. This is a sport, or these are sports that people may have played for 10 plus years. So they put on this pedestal about playing at the highest level, and when it doesn't happen, what are you going to do? What are you passionate about that you can funnel all of those emotions and all of those all those attributes of hard work and determination and all those things you get from athletes? How do you use that to propel you to the next level of your life? And a lot of those things I learned from football. Just punctuality, respect, working in a team, and more so even learning how to motivate different people, because not everyone is motivated the same. And what I've learned from sports that I carry today is that it takes a certain type of person to be able to identify that initially, that this person may not react to this way of coaching, or I guess just in general. So knowing how to just be a team and be able to motivate others while also maintaining some sort of just a sense of self, while also being immersed within a team and having that individuality, is definitely a couple of things that I hold true to this day still.
Great.
So, Paris, we are running out of time for your segment, but I want to give you a chance to let people know what you're up to. I mentioned you're on the team and the Belisario College of Communications. Talk about the work that you're doing.
So currently right now I'm the strategic communications coordinator for the Belisario College at Penn State. So from everything from public relations, brand management, to we produce a podcast, alumni produce podcasts, to telling the stories of our students, to helping them produce content that we post. And then especially with COVID being a thing now, we've been a lot more adapting with our video. But for the most part, telling the stories of our college. We have a very loving and giving support staff as far as our faculty and staff on hand for our students. And we see ourselves in the highest regard, and we make sure that our students are being taught those same techniques and best practices that they're going to see in the field whenever they go off in their internships into their entry job level positions and things of that nature. So I've been with the college for a year now. It's been great, and I'm looking forward to more achieving with the college.
Paris, what are some of the resources that you're sharing with your former teammates when they reach out to you for advice, or when they want to talk about career goals, or what kind of information do you pass on to potential students?
Well, we usually have a conversation, and it'll probably go along the lines of, what are you passionate about? And back to those things I spoke on earlier about the energy you put into what you're doing actively. Just because sports is gone, you're not less of a passionate person that you are on the field. You just need to redirect that. And I think a lot of times, a lot of my old teammates, whether they are NFL free agents, or they've dealt with injuries, or they're just looking for the next step in general, those guys they're hungry in the sense that they are so eager to get to that next step, but they may look at where I am now and think that it was an easy transition for me, and it wasn't. I had to have those hard conversations with myself in the mirror as well, to say, hey, listen, this isn't working out the way we planned. What are we going to do now? And I was working in different Walmarts and Sam's Clubs, trying to sell DirecTV, from that to WPSU, from that to being trusted to shoot the Penn State games by myself, from that, all in a matter of about 2 years or so. So as far as the resources I would give my old teammates, I would tell them, for one, I would definitely give them Mike Corman's information, because he's our human alumni database, and he can basically just compute on the spot what alumni, where they are, who does what you want to do, and connect you with them. As well as we have an entire website that's specifically made to I guess help our alumni navigate as to how they can better take advantage of our resources. Right. So it's a lot of different things, but it would just all stem from a conversation. I would want to gauge where they are now, where they're looking to go. And if it's people that I know personally that I can help them with, I jump at the chance. I love those kind of things, because those guys are my brothers forever. And I'll always make sure that if there's anything I can do to help them, I will do, for sure.
There's a lot of resources available to alumni from their specific academic college, from the university as a whole, and from the Alumni Association that they can benefit from.
Oh yes, most definitely. It's so many resources I can't even count, but I'm excited to give everything I've learned over these years and share with them. For me, it's just gratifying to see teammates going on, taking that next step, going on to have families and pay mortgages and things of that nature. It's exciting for me, because I'm in that process now, also taking that next step. And even though I've had longer to do it, regardless, still, I consider myself in the same boat. Whatever position I'm in, I've always said to myself, I feel like I have a chip on my shoulder, because I'm rebranding. People are going to know me for something other than football at this point, because I'm putting my passion into something else. So I have that chip on my shoulder every day, and that continues to push me and makes me want to work hard, but also to improve as the communication professional I am now. So a lot of those things still tie into, you can't cut that stuff off. And that's one of the things that I try to preach to some of my old teammates. The passion will always be there, man. You just have to learn what you care about. And then, the next steps are pretty much, they kind of fall in line. But the hard part is learning, what are you passionate about outside from football, now that part of your life is over? And it may not, and they may go into coaching. Wendy, one of my old teammates, great teammate of mine, great friend of mine, he's coaching now too. He's a GA, but just in general, having those conversations and then moving on from there.
Well, Paris, hey, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to visit with us and share your story. It's great to talk to you. It's great to see where you are early in your career, and we look forward to watching you progress throughout your career. Thank you so much for being on Football Letter Live.
Thank you guys so much for having me, Paul, John. It was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Pleasure of ours too. Thank you.
All right.
All righty.
Take care, Paris.
All right. See you guys.
Along.
Well, John, it was good to talk to Paris, talk about a guy who's doing some good things early in his career. Now we're going to transition to a guy who's right in the prime of his career. We're going to invite Brandon Noble to come on to the program. Many of you know Brandon Noble. Brandon was a 3-year starter here at Penn State. He posted a team high 8 sacks and a career 72 tackles, a career high 72 tackles during the 96 season. He was a defensive tackle that earned second team All Big Ten. All Big Ten honors, was awarded the Hall Foundation Athletic Award given to the team's most outstanding player. He was a team captain, also named the Nittany Lions most outstanding senior player, the defensive most valuable player in the 97 Fiesta Bowl. He played on the 94 undefeated Rose Bowl team as a sophomore, and as a freshman also helped. Brandon, how long were you in school here? Holy cow.
I'm still in school. Are you kidding me?
He even played in that 93 Blockbuster Bowl game. Brandon, how are you?
I'm well, man. It's funny because the older you get, the better you get, right? And that was a nice long list, man. It was cool when you guys invited me to come on and they put everything together, and I you prepped me with kind of the questions and all the intros, and I was just looking at it. I was,
Right.
man, I had a pretty good career at Penn State. I definitely don't have a lot of room to complain about my time up there.
Well, hey, let's talk a little bit about that. How did you become a Nittany Lion? Take us through your recruitment process.
Well, thankfully the recruiting process back then was there was no internet. Let's just go there, right?
Right.
Growing up and playing football in the 1900s was a whole different animal. So when you got recruited, it was a little bit more regional. I'm from Virginia Beach, Virginia, and Penn State did a great job of recruiting down there. They pulled a couple guys here and there: Darren Perry, Keith Gerganis, DJ Dozier, there's, Chris Snyder, there's a list of guys that have come from the Tidewater area where I'm from. And they were the first people to recruit me. The first phone call that I got was Jim Caldwell on day one of recruiting. And Jim called, and I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it right now. I remember I was upstairs, and this is again, for anybody that doesn't remember when phones were attached to the wall. So like my mom comes running in, and I was like, up in the one room, and she's like trying to pull the phone in, right? But it won't go that far because it's in the kitchen. So I had to go downstairs, and she's like, it's Penn State. So I get on the phone with Jim and start the recruiting process. And I think that's honestly why I ended up there. I knew I wanted to go north. In Virginia Beach, it's humid, it's hot. I didn't want to play down south. I got recruited by some big schools. My final two were Penn State and Michigan, as crazy as that sounds.
Yeah.
And it was a gut feeling. I took my trip to Penn State. I slept on Kerry Collins and Jeff Perry and Kyle Brady and Derek Bonner's sofa in Nittany Suites, right? When I went to Michigan, they put me up in the best hotel in town. Wine me, dine me. Me and Chuck Penzenik, who's a teammate of mine, we're basically fighting over like a sofa and a love seat in Nittany Suites with Kerry and those guys. And it was just a gut feeling. I came home, took my trip to Penn State, took my trip to Michigan, came home, and it felt right. There was something about that visit, something about that place. We all know it, right? You know what I mean? It's home. Right? You know it. You know what I mean? So it was a gut decision, and it was funny though, because like when I went on my visit, it snowed, and I mean like a dusting. I was listening to Paris talk about that, and I don't know if Joe was worried that because I was from down south, the snow had scared me away. And he looks at me, and we're kind of walking, and I was excited about it. I mean, look at me, like I was built for the snow, and he goes, "Oh, it never snows here." You know what I mean? And like for the next 5 years, we had like 140 inches of snow. So, it was, but, look, I loved it up there. I had a great time. And it was, one of the best decisions I've ever made.
Well, certainly you arrived here during a very special time. As you're wrapping up that freshman 1993 season, looking ahead to 1994, what were your expectations for that 94 team? Was there a sense that that season had the potential to be as memorable as it turned out to be?
I think I have an interesting perspective, I think, on that season. I was so young at the time. Like, I was still trying to figure out where I was and what was going on. So I got kind of thrown into that as a starter here and there. And it was a whirlwind. I was literally just trying to survive. I mean, that's really what it boiled down. But you knew going into camp, right? Play defensive tackle. Going into camp, you go, all right, your starting offensive line is a bunch of monsters. You've got, Kyle Brady, you got, you've got Bobby Ingram, you just got, Key Johnny, you got 5 running backs, 7 fullbacks, it was insane. And one of the best quarterbacks in college football to ever play. So you knew that they were going to be really good. And I think as the season went on, it got to be almost comical. Like, you realize how special it was because they would score so fast. You would just go sit down, and they would make one adjustment. The next thing you know, you're walking back on the field.
Back on the field again.
Yeah, and it wasn't because it was 3 and out. It was because, Kijana just ripped an 80-yarder off or something like that. So It was definitely a challenge. I think being like I said, being a young guy there, for me, every time I was thrown on the football field in whatever situation, I just wanted to survive, and I didn't want Brian Gelsheiser to yell at me much more, because every time I had to go back into the huddle, Gels was screaming at me because I was doing something wrong. So, that was my 94 experience. It was amazing to be a part of that team, but it was a whirlwind. I mean, it's one of those ones. It just went so fast.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, you mentioned you mentioned being young on that team, and playing on the defensive side of the ball against what is arguably the best offensive line in the history of Penn State football, right? Yeah, you had Goon, you had Bucky Greeley, you had Andre Johnson, you had Marco Rivera, Jeff Hardings. I mean, that was a murderer's row, right? I mean, there's probably 30 years of NFL football amongst that group.
Yeah, I mean that was.
I know that's not really a
practice,
question, but
yeah, practice was easy, right? You know what I mean? Like at the end of the day, oh, there I am. Sorry, that distracted me for a second there. But look, I mean, practice definitely was easy. You know what I mean? It really was, and it was one of those deals where you you went to practice, and then when you got to the game on Saturday, it was easy. I mean, easy's relative, right? But it made it easier. And I was fortunate. I mean, look, anytime you get to line up against, Bucky Greeley, who was like a KG vet right at that point, and really underrated when it comes to that group of guys, I think, because of the career, especially that Marco and Hardings had in the NFL. But Bucky really was the guy that held that whole thing together. And then, look, I was a nose guard, so I played against Hardings and Rivera every day in practice. And, there weren't a lot better in the Big Ten, or there weren't a lot better that I played against in the NFL. And I got to play against both of those guys in the NFL too, which was really cool. Although I did play for the Dallas Cowboys, and I had to play against Larry Allen every single day in practice. And Larry is maybe the greatest offensive lineman to ever play the game. But I was used to it at that point, like just getting beat up. It's what I do well. So, it was fun.
Hey,
Well,
Mel, sorry, John, 1 second. Mel, can you pull that picture back up of Brandon's sack against Northwestern? I want to ask him specifically about this picture here. So Brandon, can you take me through the next 10 seconds after this sack? What happened to you?
Well, I think I stood up and I celebrated. And I think at this point we were winning pretty handily, and it was my third sack. Right? Look, and if you have 3 sacks in a game, like that is something that is so hard to do. And I stood up and like pumped my fist, as big a celebration as you ever saw on the Penn State football field. And I remember looking over, and you can see the guy right behind me, right? Like Joe is right there. And I remember, yeah, exactly, right there. And I remember him looking at me, and I got up and I when I celebrated, I looked over there, and I remember he was yelling and finger wagging at me because I was celebrating. You know what I mean? Like that's classic Joe, right? 3rd sack, great day. I don't even think I got the game ball for this game, but like it was like, because I think Kim Herring had like 5 interceptions or something. But this is one of my favorite games. This is one of my favorite memories. I got him down 3 times. They were the reigning Big Ten champs and have been to the Rose Bowl the year before.
Yes.
It was a good one. And it was a little bit of snow that night. It was a really cool football game.
Yeah. Well, fans, some time ago here in a poll taken by the Center Daily Times, these fans voted you one of the 10 best defensive tackles ever at Penn State. What does that honor mean anything to you?
Yeah, I mean, look, John, just a little bit, right? I mean, that was
the other great defensive tackles that we've had through all of the years. Yes.
Yeah, anytime that was really cool, and I'm not sure if Keith Conlon paid a lot of people to do that for me or what happened. But Goon is a good friend of mine. And he takes care of me quite well. So he may have started a little campaign there for me. But I mean, look, that was a tremendous honor, right? I mean, when you think about, Matt Millen, Bruce Clark, Mike Reed, Steve Smear, I mean, Tim Johnson. I mean, the list goes on, Anthony Adams, Jimmy Kennedy, like there's just so many of them.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, look, to be in the top 10, I mean, that was really, really cool. And again, I think that sometimes it's hard to appreciate the things that you've done, because and I don't want this to sound the wrong way, because it just seemed normal, right? It's the path my life took. But I got to do some really, really cool things and do what I wanted to do, right? At the end of the day, and be really good at it. And sometimes that's hard to grasp, but when things like that happen, it definitely sinks in.
So I brought up the little celebration after the sack and Joe wagging his finger at you. Any favorite Joe stories that you want to share?
Well, since I'm looking so shaggy right now, I'll share this one. When I was, so obviously when we were there was a no facial hair rule. You had to be clean cut, no earrings, look presentable, which obviously I don't right now. But when I was playing in the NFL, I had this stretch where I did this. I grew my beard out, my hair was kind of long. And when I would come back into Happy Valley, I would hide from him, right? I'm like 30 years old, a grown man with children of my own. And I would go back into the Lash building and I would like sneak around, you know what I mean? Like I was trying to like dodge him. And one time I remember being back there and I'd gone downstairs to see John Thomas in the weight room, and I went back upstairs to kind of say hi to a couple other guys, and I just like walked around the corner, right? And there he is, and there was no hiding. And he knew immediately, like it was, and that was the thing, right? Like you think about all the guys that he coached.
Yes.
Right? Like I walked around the corner and he looked at me, he goes, "Noble, you can't afford a razor with all that money they're paying you." Right. And he like grabbed me by the ear, walked me down to his office, sat me down, like yelled at me for like 3 minutes, and then asked me if Barry Tilch was still fat and living in Pittsburgh. You know what I mean? It was just like that was him, but he had, I knew he was going to yell at me. And that's what you love about him. You know what I mean? Like he asked me if my parents were still in Virginia Beach and how was my sister. And, I'd been out of school for, 7, 8, 9 years at this point. Right. And,
so remembered everything about you.
Everything. And that was really, I think that moment right there, you realize, because when you're playing for him, it's hard, right? I mean, he made it hard intentionally, and that's a good thing. I think we need more of that sometimes, just in life in general for our kids. And so it was a process, and it wasn't always a fun process. I'm a football coach now, and one of the things a football coach does is he makes you better than you think you can be, right? And that's what they did there, on and off the field. And so like I said, I was fully anticipating getting yelled at, and I'm glad he didn't let me down, because he absolutely let me have it. And so that's actually probably my favorite Joe story, was being terrified of him at 32, 6'2", 320 pounds or whatever I was at the time, and terrified of that man.
What kind of things, what did you find is the biggest differences between playing in college and in the NFL? Because you certainly had an excellent NFL career as well. And how did Penn State prepare you for that NFL career, Brandon?
Well, I think so. I think Penn State prepared me in the way that, kind of going back to what I was just talking about with Joe, how they preached toughness, right? It was about being mentally and physically tough, and then doing all the little things right. And that, for me, again, I am small, relatively speaking, for a defensive tackle, and I had to battle into the NFL and do things, and I got to the point where I was willing to do the things that other guys weren't going to do in order to stay there. No. I was willing to do all the grunt work. I was willing to play injured. I was not going to let anything stop me from getting there. I was self-disciplined. I was motivated. They didn't have to do much to me, and they couldn't make me any bigger. I mean, they did. I left Penn State at 265 pounds. By the time I was done in the NFL, I was 320 pounds. So I was basically a square, and it was, but I lean back on that. They made it so hard at Penn State to the NFL in that respect was easy. I think the biggest difference too, though, John, is like when you get to the NFL, it truly does become a business. Yeah. And I think that one of the things that you really miss, especially when you played someplace like Penn State, is the community, right? The love of the jersey, of the colors of the school. It means something. Like you're there because it means something, and your brother's on the field, and the guys that you go through it with, it's important to you. In the NFL, you get a little bit of that, but it's a game, it's a business, it's a job. You know, I go to work, especially as I got a little older in my career. You know, I'm married, I've got kids. Like, it's a 9 to 5. As crazy as that sounds, you just happen to be slamming your face into other people for a living, as opposed to sitting at a desk in a suit and tie.
Yeah.
So I think that's it. And then the other thing that really stung, John, for me was I played on some really bad football teams. So losing, like, I hate losing, and I won a lot of football games at Penn State. But to go into the NFL and be 5-11 for however many years, it was soul crushing for a while.
You know, Brandon, I've heard you tell the story, but I'm going to ask you to tell it again. Your path to the NFL, right? You were an undrafted free agent. You made several teams, but the story that I love that you tell is a story of perseverance. When you're an undrafted free agent, it's different than being drafted and the way that the team feels about you, right? You had to prove yourself at not only every single year, but like every single day, to prove that you needed to be on each of the teams that you were on. Talk a little bit about that difference between the undrafted free agent and somebody who might have been a 3rd round pick.
Well, I think that, you know, so my rookie year, I'm is 98, 97, 98. And I go out, I sit there, right? The whole draft goes on, again, going back to, you know, telephones on the walls, you know, answering machines with little cassette tapes in them. So I was stuck in my apartment, Nittany apartment, for 3 days waiting to get drafted. And I didn't get drafted. And I ended up being an undrafted free agent. And you kind of go through the mini camp process and you see how guys are treated. But I think the best way to kind of explain what the difference is I was with the Niners, and we were at some college out in California, and we check into camp. And this is for preseason camp. Again, we were joking with, you know, a little bit before the show with Paris about 2-a-days, right? And so this is like a 6-week training camp, right? 6 weeks, 2-a-days. And we're checking in. I got my big duffel bag, and I walk in, and I got Brandon Noble, and I get this key, right? It's like the room, you know, C12 or something like that. So I'm, all right, that's cool. You know, so I start walking. I realize there's like 5 or 6 other guys. Like, what room are you in? I was C12. So we're walking, yeah, right. We're walking, and everybody else is kind of going this way to the right. And we're kind of going to the left. And there's a kind of a decent sized group of us. And we walk in, and we realize that our building is an actual classroom building. So all the other guys are staying in the dorm, and we walk in, and we're in like the biology department. And they've basically taken 2 classrooms and taken the divider out and laid cots in this classroom. And here's, you know, a bunch of guys that are basically not going to make the team, is basically what it boils down to. Yeah. And every morning, well, not every morning, but a lot of mornings, the Reaper, who's the guy that cut you, would come in at like 5:45 before everybody woke up, and you'd hear that door kind of creak open, right? And you'd get under that pillow, man, and you'd pull yourself down there like the boogeyman was coming in the room. And he would walk through, and he would tap somebody on the shoulder and whisper in their, hey, you know, come, coach wants to talk to you, bring your playbook. And you'd never see that guy again. So that's, and then everybody else is in a normal dorm, right? You know what I mean? Just like, you know, 2 guys to a room or whatever it was. And so you really do have to prove yourself every day, and the reps are limited, and the opportunity is limited. Like I played in one preseason game where my only reps were 3 snaps of the other team kneeling at the end of the game. Right? Like that, at that point, you're like, I'm going home. You know what I mean? Like, that is what it is. So I was fortunate, you know, there was something called NFL Europe. I played in NFL Europe twice. I was with the Niners for 2 camps. They cut me both times. The second time I did some time on the practice squad out there. I ended up going to Dallas. I was fortunate in that Leon Lett, who's a good friend of mine, actually ended up getting suspended. So he had an 8-week suspension, and they kept 2 young defensive tackles for 1 spot for the 8 weeks that Leon was out. And myself and Nathan Davis, who actually was from Indiana, battled back and forth over the course of camp. Well, first of all, just to get through camp, right? And then after that, when I finally made the team, like I'll never forget, right? I was sitting in the locker room in Dallas, and it's kind of a square, and there's 4 entrances, and I must have been a funny shade of green sitting there. I was basically waiting to get cut. Like, I'd never made it this far. And I was just sitting there waiting to get cut. And one of the trainers came out, a guy named Bob Haas. I'll never forget it. He and I become friends, and he grabs my shoulder. He says, "Step out here, man." And he goes, "Hey, dude, you're okay." You know, and I was like, whew, like I'm getting goosebumps right now. That was one of those moments in my life, right, where I was like, oh, I just made it. It took me 3 camps. I got cut 4 times. Went to NFL Europe twice. Undrafted free agent. Next thing I know, I made it. You know what I mean? It was amazing.
Yeah.
And then every year, I had 4 one-year contracts in Dallas, right? And I was a starter. I started 2.5 seasons, 3 years in Dallas, 1-year contracts every year. I wouldn't let my wife buy a house. She drove her crazy because I was like, they could cut me at any point now. She's like, you're the starting nose guard. They're not cutting you. I was like, they might cut me. And that's how I lived. And it was terrible. But even, I mean, at the end, I was comfortable, obviously, but I had a really, really, to be an undrafted free agent and basically get, 9 years total, but 7 years active in the NFL. I wouldn't trade it for a world. And I also wouldn't trade it the way that I went in. I appreciate every moment that I had in that league. Nothing was handed to me. I took it. And, I don't ever say I was lucky to play. I was fortunate to get the opportunity, and I took advantage of it.
Perseverance
Absolutely.
all the way.
Too stupid to quit, John.
Yeah. Well, there was a nice story about you recently in the Daily Collegian up here. What type of feedback are you hearing from the community about what you've been doing and the significance of giving back?
Yeah.
Now that you're out of the football.
Yeah. So obviously it's been a crazy year, right? I think that's a nice way of putting it. And right in January, February, I started talking to a friend of mine that lives here in the area, and he talked me into buying 2 of his partners out in a restaurant. And seemed like a good idea at the time, right? And then all of a sudden the world shut down and dining shut down. It was crazy. And so as the pandemic kind of took hold, and we found this little niche feeding healthcare workers. And really what it boiled down to is one of my business partners, Tommy Brower, had some friends that worked that were nurses, and somebody wanted to buy them lunch one day. I said, all right, you know what, like the doors were closed, no one's eating in the restaurant. This is what we're doing. So we started this thing, we called them hero packages, and we basically opened it up. And actually that article in the Daily Collegian, John, turned from the Daily Collegian, and then I got in the USA Today, and the next thing I know, I'm on Fox News. And we basically started this campaign where we just we asked people to donate money. And we said, whatever you donate, we'll match in food. And we'll feed anybody and everybody in the hospital, in the healthcare industry. And that's really what it came down to. And here in Southeast PA, our nursing homes, our retirement homes were hit really, really hard. And the hospitals, especially closer to the city. So we were bringing people basically, individually packed meals that they could take home, that they could eat there at the office, fresh cooked, healthy food. I love cheeseburgers and cheesesteaks and pizza, right? But sometimes you just need, some lasagna or, some grilled chicken. And look, I'm obviously not the healthiest guy in the world. You don't end up 320 pounds by eating grilled chicken, okay? So I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I eat like that all the time. But when you're in the middle of it, like, it's important to have good food. And so the community kind of rallied around us, and it did a couple things. It allowed us to, number one, keep the doors open, the lights on, and people employed. But at the same time, it allowed us to really help the community, help the people that were taking care of us in what's maybe one of the scariest times that I've lived through, as far as what we're going on. And we've continued doing it. We still have it's starting again. We're kicking the hero packages back up. We're in the medical facilities right now feeding people, and it's Christmas time, and taking care of people right now is important. And so that's something that we did. It obviously, like I said, it felt great to help out. And honestly, from the business perspective, it allowed us to keep the business going. So it was a win-win in my book.
So that's Brandon's talking about Bright Spot Exton If you
I
want
probably
more
should have
information,
mentioned the name of the restaurant, should I? Bright Spot Cafe. Yeah.
yes, Bright Spot Cafe, Bright Spot Exton, and their hero packages. If you want more information about that, we just put the link in the chat, and you'll find that link also on Facebook. Brandon, I'm a football junkie. Like, I'll watch anything. And the one night I'm sitting on my couch, and it's the junior college national championship game, and I turn it on, and I'm like, God, I know that voice. And it wasn't until about halftime until they put your face on. They put your face on TV, and I'm like, oh, all right, it's Brandon Noble. I hear your voice on NFL radio broadcasts. You're doing a podcast. You're doing a TV show. Talk a little bit about the work that you're doing now after your career.
Well, like every ex-athlete, Paul, I didn't know what else to do with my life, so I figured I'd just keep talking about football. And so that's really what it boiled down to. I coached college ball for 8 years after I retired. I loved it, but the lifestyle was terrible. I wanted to be home with my wife and kids. Being a husband and a father, the most important thing I've ever done. And so I wanted to be here for that. And so I started, dabbling in broadcast. I don't know if you can tell, but I love to talk, and I'm not shy. So that helps. And so I've tried a little bit of everything. And one of those little bit of everythings was I got introduced to a handful of guys up there at Penn State. Chris Buchanani, Kevin Horn, and everybody knows Mike the Mailman, right? And we started this show called the obligatory PSU pregame show. And that's me in the middle with way less hair and less beard and a black eye. That's a real black eye. I just want everybody to know. I was coaching high school football, and I was showing a kid how to tackle. I didn't realize I didn't have a face mask on anymore. And I put my face on his face mask, and I got a black eye. So it works well for the picture. But I mean, we talk about Penn State football, but more importantly, like Happy Valley, right? We're all Penn Staters. We all love the place. It's about all the great things in Happy Valley. The idea is really to give the folks that don't get back there very often a little bit of little flavor, a little dopamine. I've been able to find work doing radio. I've got a face for radio too, right? I don't have to shave. I don't have to put a tie on. I like it a lot. I've partnered up. I work for a company called Sports USA Media. We do NFL games. So I do 5 or 6 games a year. Keeps me at the stadium. I mean, look, I love football. Football has been so good to me. It's been good to my family. And it's a huge part of who I am. And so being in the stadium, whether it's as the defensive coordinator at Downingtown East High School, or calling the JUCO national title, or doing the Ravens at the Titans and the Ravens a couple weeks ago. Like, I just love being there. And so I'm fortunate to have been able to do it. I really am. And I like to, hopefully I'll continue to do it. People can catch the TV show, and we do a podcast on the obligatory, and it's a lot of fun. That's a fun one. I mean, we just have a good time. That is so low key but it's good. Like I said, Chris and Kevin know more about Penn State than anybody should know about Penn State, to be completely honest with you. And Mike is just Mike. So it was his birthday. Happy birthday, Mike the Mailman. I know he's not watching because he doesn't know how to do this kind of stuff. So
all those great lessons you learned at Penn State, and those great teammates and great connections that you made through Penn State, still serving you well.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Look, the Penn State, like I said, when we first started, John, it's one of the best decisions I've ever made in my entire life. Next to asking my wife to marry me, she's also a Penn Stater. We met up there, but like it does, right? It basically puts you on the path. I was fortunate to play for Joe. I was fortunate to learn the lessons that I learned there. I've got an amazing Penn State football family of guys that I played with and that I love dearly. And the whole community, you know what I mean? It's a special place, and being a Penn State Nittany Lion and playing football up there definitely made me a better man. There's no doubt about it.
Fantastic.
Brandon, we want to thank you for joining us on a Football Letter Live tonight. Thank you for allowing us to share your story with fellow Penn Staters. It's always good to catch up with you. And thanks for supporting the program.
Yeah, no, hey, look, thanks for having me. Like you said, I'm glad I didn't sleep through it, and this was a blast. I love it. This is my favorite place. So anytime, guys. Thank you.
Great having you.
Well, John, another good Football Letter Live episode. It was great to have Brandon and Paris on the show.
Great evening for Penn State. And
Absolutely. And that's all the time that we have for tonight. Join us next week when we'll welcome Wally Richardson and Lydell Sargent to the show. Wally is the director of Penn State Football's Lettermen's Club and a former standout quarterback with the Nittany Lions. We're also encouraging everyone to sign up for Saturday's live broadcast. This Saturday, there's going to be a live broadcast titled Happy Valley Live. The Alumni Association is joining with other local organizations to bring awareness of all the great businesses that we have here in Happy Valley. So we're partnering with the Happy Valley Adventure Bureau for a special virtual event from 4 in the afternoon until 10 o'clock in the evening on Saturday. Small businesses in Center County need our help now more than ever, especially those businesses that rely on traffic from major tourism draws like Penn State football for their annual revenue. This event gives those who hold Happy Valley near and dear to their heart and locals alike a chance to stop by and see all their favorite Happy Valley businesses right on Facebook. You'll have the opportunity to buy gift cards for future use or snag holiday gifts that can be shipped right to your door. Tune in starting at 4 o'clock on December 5th. That's 4 o'clock this Saturday on the Happy Valley Adventure Bureau's Facebook page. Also, we're encouraging Penn Staters to save the date for this year's 2020 holiday auction that's benefiting the Center County United Way. This is an online auction that'll take place December 9th through the 11th. Penn Staters can spread holiday cheer and comfort right in the comfort of their own homes while supporting the Center County United Way through Penn State's annual holiday auction. You can find more information online, and we thank everybody for considering participating in both of these great events. You know, when you don't have almost 1 million people coming to Happy Valley in the fall for college football games, it hurts businesses here, right? All those businesses that we love, your favorite restaurants, your favorite place to catch a drink after the game, your favorite place to buy some Penn State gear, they all need your help. And so we hope that you take advantage of both of these opportunities on Saturday and then again on December 9th through the 11th for the holiday auction.
And that Happy Valley Live program you can jump right onto as soon as the Penn State Rutgers football game has wrapped up on Fox Sports #1 because it's a noontime kickoff. And by 4 o'clock, you can move right on over to Happy Valley Live.
It's a great day for Penn State, right? A great day to cheer us on to victory and then go support local businesses here in Center County. Again, thank you so much for tuning in. To our members out there, thank you so much for your support. For those of you who aren't members, go on out to our website and join the largest alumni association in the world. You can become a member at alumni.psu.edu/join. Thanks for all you do for the university, for the glory, and for the future. We are
Penn State.